Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to look back at one of the great animated series of the 90s, and that is Beavis and Butthead. If you didn't get the reference in my little opening there. I think nowadays Beavis and Butthead is more timely than ever. And I think really a lot of the things Mike Judge did as the creator of Beavis and Butthead and as the creator of so much else is genius and prescient, and like he could really see the future on a lot of things, you know? And he had a real way, Mike Judge, of capturing humanity and like pop culture and the times better than anybody else. You know, he's almost like a great satirist. Like, you know, I think of Kurt Vonnegut or going back further of Mark Twain. And I put Mike Judge in that bracket of writers and creators because I don't think anybody does it quite like him, like reflects ourselves to us quite like Mike Judge does. And I think the way he does it in Beavis and Butthead is so modern and really couldn't be more true. Now, if you're not a big Beavis and Butthead guy, if you don't go back that far, or if you haven't gone back to see what all that is about, basically it's a show about two guys, Beavis and his friend Butthead, and they sit on the couch and they watch music videos on MTV and they make fun of them.
Is this like the Village People? Wow, wow, West. Wow, wow, West.
It's a lot like if you're, I don't know if you're a comedy guy or whatever, if you're into these comedy channels nowadays that we have on YouTube that like watch all these famous, terrible comedians and make fun of them. Probably the greatest example of it is Red Bar.
Sounds like mission accomplished.
Hiya Heads, how you doing? And, you know, you think of your Elephant Graveyard, you're too lazy to try, those types. Now, here's the kicker, right? Here's the great irony. Nowadays, we have Logan Paul and Big Mike, facts, and they are almost exact replicas of Beavis and Butthead. The tragedy is they are not, you know, wittingly, cuttingly witty or aware of their foolery, right? Like Beavis and Butthead have this like sense of like what's right and wrong in music. At least that's how I read it. At least that's how a lot of what Mike Judge does comes off to me. Like these characters, you know, they see things the way they should be seen. They cut through the foolishness out there in the world. And today we've lost our sense of, you know, shame almost in pop culture. And you see that everywhere you look. Thank goodness we have podcasts and so and guys like the ones we do who are, you know, critical of this popular garbage, just like Beavis and Butthead once were. So let's take a look at Beavis and Butthead number 1 from way back in the good old days and see what all the fuss is about. I'll tell you what, the cover is awesome. It's very reminiscent to me of like a Ren and Stimpy style artwork that was also really big in the 90s, you know, that kind of like gross out artwork. Later, we know how influential that's going to be on like even a SpongeBob SquarePants, a cat dog. I've been going back watching lots of older 90s animation, you know, reminiscing, having that nostalgia thing. I'm getting old now. And you can see the influence Beavis and Butthead has had and Spumco comics and Ren and Stimpy and all that stuff has had. And you see it here. And I love the scraping the jaw, right? Because they're always singing the songs that they see on MTV. So anyway, Marvel again gets to pick up the adaptation rights here, and I think that's cool. And the guys they have on the job are not super well known. They're just, you know, staffers at Marvel, but at least that's the way it feels, right? Mike Lackey and Rick Parker. Mike Lackey writes it. Rick Parker does the art. I looked up Rick Parker before shooting this to see like what's Rick Parker done before. What do we know Rick Parker from? And we don't know him from anything, actually. We know him from doing the Beavis and Butthead comics for Marvel. So, but apparently he's done a bunch of other humor art and, his art's been featured here and there. I just thought it was interesting. Like, we have these two on it instead of, names. But I guess in the 90s, Marvel was kind of against names too. Anyway, it really comes together just like an episode of the show, minus all the music videos, which is a letdown. Because for me, the great thing about Beavis and Butthead was their criticism of the current day, right? Of all the foolishness people were absorbing on TV all day. Here, we just kind of have them going on an adventure. And the dialogue is perfect. I'm hungry, Butthead. Feed me, feed me. Settle down, Toadlick. We're here. So you can actually hear it as you read it, which makes it fun. One of my favorite Mike Judge characters is here on the next page, Anderson, who they think is so old. Guys, I was watching the other day and they heard, Beavis and Butthead were sitting on the couch watching TV and they heard about wills. When you get old, you write a will, you leave money to somebody. So they're like, hey, we can get money if someone old dies. Let's go to Anderson's house. He's old and just do stuff for him because soon he's going to die, right? Because he's old. We'll get all his money. You have any money? So then they started doing chores for Anderson. Okay, what else is great about Anderson is that for me, Mike Judge's greatest creation outside of the many awesome movies, Office Space, Idiocracy, there's another great movie that he had something to do with on the tip of my tongue. But anyways, the greatest Mike Judge thing for me was King of the Hill.
Bobby, if you weren't my son, I'd hug you.
And this character, Anderson, has the same exact voice as Hank Hill. So just imagine, oh, damn it, Bobby. He has that sort of a thing going on that Texas propane and propane accessory salesman, except for he gets harassed all the time by Beavis and Butthead, which that's hilarious. And then, by the way, of course, because this is a Marvel comic, you get that Marvel crossover here where Beavis and Butthead are reading The Punisher and imagine what that would be like. You get little shout outs to John Romita Jr.'s Punisher, which is one of my favorite Punishers, actually. You have some really cool 90s ads, where in the 90s, comics were getting extreme, oh, this can be cool and edgy too. And you see that in some of the, not only in the ads, but in the comedy and the animation, everything in the 90s, there was gross out humor, right? Ren and Stimpy, I think, is a really perfect example of it too. And we're going to look at Ren and Stimpy eventually. If you're 90s animation guys or 90s comic book fans or whatever, into the 90s stuff, there's some great 90s stuff coming out of this period. Oh man, wow. For me, Super Nintendo is the greatest video game system ever of all time. And Mega Man X, wow. Dude, Mega Man, how has there not been Mega Man comics? You know what? I think there has been Mega Man comics. There haven't been really, really good Mega Man comics. Imagine a Mega Man manga. These old boxes, I wish games still came in these great old boxes because I would have so many of them. I would have a whole new hobby. This channel might be about these old Super Nintendo games if they came in great old boxes still. And you see a little bit of what I mean here. That example of the gross out humor. Things like this, these super up close shots, these visceral body humor and crossed with body horror type shots. These are going to be really typical of the 90s. Even if you're a bit younger and you're used to watching your SpongeBob SquarePants, this happens a lot in SpongeBob too, right?
They let you out already? Oh, you look terrible, SpongeBob.
You can see the influence these 90s guys had. And really, I think it really all stems from Ren and Stimpy. I have a bunch of Spumco comics behind me. I actually have Ren and Stimpy #1 in this pile next to me too, but it's sealed and we're not opening it, okay? Another amazing Mike Judge character, Stuart. Stuart is a big dweeb, right? He's the biggest dweeb around, and he's so innocent, and he's so teacher's petty and mama's boy, right? And Beavis and Butthead torture him nonstop about everything. And it's such a great foil for a Beavis and Butthead. You know, you have these two like no goodniks around, and you have Stewart there who is such a perfect balance for them both. Now they finally make it to the dentist. Butthead's braces are all messed up. You get a bit more of that gross out, you know, visceral kind of body horror and body humor here. The 90s was all about gross out. Think about Earthworm Jim, or think about who else was a gross out guy in the 90s? Well, was Jackass the 90s? Jackass was gross out and it was 90s, right? All that stuff. Think about it. Think about Green Day. Think about all that stuff we were up to in the 90s. It was all gross out stuff, dude. Dude, remember Earthbound for Super Nintendo? I think in Nintendo Power Magazine, there was like a scratch and sniff for Earthbound too. You know, scratch and sniff. That was that time period. Oh my gosh, one of the great references here, and how cool of them to do it too. Beavis and Butthead pick up Jack Kirby's Devil Dinosaur, which is really, who knows about it except me and you, right guys? Devil Dinosaur? Right behind me. Okay, I got it too. Do you? Mine's in Italian. Is yours? So probably not. But still, how cool is it to see that Jack Kirby influence again here too? Like, hey, we didn't forget. It's the 90s, but we didn't forget Jack Kirby. And here's Beavis and Butthead getting into that Jack Kirby Devil Dinosaur. What a cool little kind of underrated one. Oh my God. You know, that's one thing about old comics. Sometimes the ads are just as cool as the comic book. Eternal Champions. Never played it, but I wish I had. A game for the Sega. Sega was just as cool as the Super Nintendo, but from my memory, didn't have as good games, but we loved it just the same. And wow, what a cool bit of box art this would have been for Eternal Champions. Never played it. I like the look of this character though. Oh, and last but not least here, in the last story of this kind of anthology, one based on Mr. Van Driesen, their kind of hippie high school teacher. And really, to me, what was the coolest thing about Van Driesen in the Beavis and Butthead show was the introduction to kind of who else was around in the Beavis and Butthead world. Like, who else was seeing these two no goodniks, these two like dumbbells, right, for what they really are. And I thought the introduction too of Daria as a classmate of theirs, Daria, another big Mike Judge cartoon, maybe that's the one I was thinking of earlier, is cool that it comes right from that same room. And it kind of finishes there. Mecha Warrior, another Super Nintendo game. Oh, the last ad in the comic is really cool too, because the last ad plays on what Beavis and Butthead are all about, and that's music. And in the 90s, Guns N' Roses' Spaghetti Incident, which was a cover album, would have just come out. And how many times did we hear Beavis and Butthead say, Axl Rose is cool, yeah, That's great that's right there at the end, because all Beavis and Butthead fans would know. So anyways, that is the show for this week, guys. If you're a 90s kid like me and you like going back to that nostalgic period of gross out comics and hilarious cartoons, I think it's no more relevant then than it is today. You know, look around you on this YouTube of ours. So anyways, if you've been enjoying the show, like and subscribe for me, and more comics next week. See you then. See you then.